leading up to working on the graphic novel that I'm sharing with you, the context is that the pandemic started in March. And I think, like everyone, my wife and I and my family were just thrown upside down by it. And I started to do some diary entries, and I would post them on Instagram about what was going on in my life. And so here's one of the pages of that. Challenges: teaching online. I miss my students. It's been twice as much work, and we'll probably have to do it all again in the fall. Uncertainty: missing the little things like going to the movies, coffee shops, and hugs. Things that make it better: our new dog, Deethra. She's a rat terrier. My mother-in-law's cooking and staying creative. So yeah, a lot was going on. Both my wife and I teach in higher ed, and we suddenly had to figure out how to teach virtually. My sister-in-law and my mother-in-law moved in with us. They sheltered in place with us for 3.5 months. And that was definitely a learning curve, but also really lovely just to be able to spend that unexpected time together. So that's sort of the backdrop to uh, the time that I describe in Bittersweet. The semester just finished, and we just finished our final exams, and then my wife and I, we definitely had cabin fever, and we decided to do a drive down to Florida to rescue my mom. And so Bittersweet was created based on that experience, this 2-week trip that we took. And I like to think of it as part road trip because we make this drive all the way from Baltimore to Cape Coral, Florida, Baltimore, Maryland to Cape Coral, Florida. And I think of it as a rescue mission because my mom had been sheltering in place by herself in Florida, and we wanted to get her and bring her back to Maryland with us. It's also a harvest story because we have over 40 mango trees at my mom's house and a bunch of properties that she owns in the city. And we wanted to still maintain our mango harvest. So this is what we do every mango season in the summer. And all the mangoes were ripe and they were ready to go. And there's no way my mom could have picked all those mangoes herself. So we wanted to go down there and help her. And ultimately, it's a family story. It's about the three of us together in quarantine for 2 weeks in Florida. And it's also about my dad too, who had recently passed away, and we were still grieving over his loss. And so I think the whole comic is suffused in his spirit. Okay, so this is the first drawing that I did for Bittersweet. Driving isn't so bad when you can take nap breaks and your husband feeds you oranges. So this is the road trip element of the journey. This is the first chapter of the journey, us going from Baltimore to Florida in a day. So we were really nervous about that drive. I don't think either of us had driven that far as adults. And so it actually worked out really well. We had a lot of fun, and we went back and forth. We alternated maybe 3 to 4 hours at a time driving. And there was a lot to see throughout the different states, like how different states handled the pandemic, and it was really memorable. And so I was devoted a couple pages to that. And I wanted to share this first drawing just so you could see the process of how I made the pandemic, this sketchbook. And I can show you a little time lapse. So this is the original sketch. And then I go ahead and ink it. I also ink the text, and the text keeps changing just a little bit. It's very iterative. And then I do a simple watercolor wash, and then I overlay it with a blue. And this is the final page laid out. So this was the drive from Maryland into Virginia and then North Carolina, and just little notes from that part of our trip. So when I did this first drawing, I was happy with the results, and it ended up kind of establishing the style and my process for the whole book. I did all of the drawings on an iPad, and daily I kept a journal, a written journal, and I made little thumbnail sketches using an app called Notability. And then I devoted about 2 hours a day to do the actual visual diary entries. So usually it was 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. I would just draw out in the patio with just my iPad. And what would happen is I would look at the journal, and I would probably have like 2 or 3 days lead time, and so I could look at the journal and highlight different elements that I liked, and then those highlighted elements I would draw. And the look became this. It became the style was slightly more realistic than the golf. It was more like observational sketches. And just to simplify things, because I gave myself this 2 hour window every day to work on this, for all the shading, I just did a simple watercolor wash. And the only color was this blue that I chose that had a little green in it, and I stuck with that blue overlay for the rest of the comic. And so the next element of Bittersweet is that it was a rescue mission. So let me read this page to you. Mom has always been a workaholic. That's why they called me Yo-Yo at the shop. She kept this up when Dad passed, and during the pandemic, she has remained in constant motion. But everyone has a limit, and after 2 months of sheltering in place, Mom started to crack. My knee is aching. I didn't sleep at all, and my vertigo is back. But I'm fine, honey. Mom, we're going to drive to Florida and bring you back up north with us. No, honey, it's too far. We're not asking, Mom. We're going, so get the house ready for quarantine. So this page was actually done after our trip. After our trip, and I had all the drawings and I laid them out to figure out an order for the comic, I realized that I needed more context. And so, unlike most of the pages, which are in the present tense as diary entries, I inserted this page early on, so to give you a flashback, to give you context about why we were taking this trip. And predominantly it was for my mom, because we were missing her, and we wanted to see her, and we wanted to bring her back with us. So this drawing is about that. This is a architectural drawing that I did of my mom's house, and it actually served its purpose. We wanted to quarantine during our trip. I don't know if you can think back to that time in May, but that was people were on high alert at that time, at least in the northeast mid-Atlantic. But in Florida, it was a totally different story. And so we really wanted to stick to the quarantine rules of 2 weeks. And we knew that my mom would be kind of begrudging about it. And I think we would have been starting to get lax about it unless we established ground rules early on. And so this is my attempt at ground rules. The yellow is the area that my mom occupied. The pink is where my wife and I stayed. And the orange was our shared space where we could be socially distant. It was outdoors. It was in a screened-in porch. And actually that area is where we spent 75% of our time, except when we were sleeping. All of our time making, cutting up mangoes, having meals, enjoying the pool, drawing. All of that was happening in the porch. So that became a crucial area, and I did a lot of drawings in the porch. The other part is that this was a harvest story. And let me read this page to you first. What's so special about Dad's mangoes? At last count, we've got almost 40 mango trees. All of them originated from a single seed, Banoi, which means grandmother, brought with her when she came to America in 1991. The golden fruit is fragrant, tender, and exceptionally sweet. And on the left, you can see my wife about to chomp on a seed piece. And then on the right, we cut them into these nugget shapes to eat. And so the harvest, coincidentally, it was we accidentally timed it perfectly, and the mangoes all were ripe right when we were there. And usually they're ripe, or at least the year before they were ripe a week after or so. So we had a lot of mangoes to take care of, and that means picking them, uh, shipping them, cutting them up, drying them, and of course eating them. And it was quite an ordeal with just the three of us. It was a ton of work, and it kind of ratcheted up near the end of our trip too, because we knew that we didn't have much time, and we just needed to deal with all of these mangoes. Just there were just so many of them, and so a lot of the mangoes we brought back up. We filled my car with mangoes, and we tried to share them with as many friends as we could. And it's called Bittersweet. There was a lot going on at the time, and we were in our little vacation summer bubble. But across the country, we were dealing with just this reckoning with race, police brutality, um, and I wanted to archive that too. I wanted to document that. And so this all happened. This page happened on a really bizarre day to my mind. So in the morning, or actually I think it was noontime, my wife and I watched on YouTube this amazing successful NASA mission, their first successful mission with a shuttle in years. And it was really a triumphant time. It felt like it met the ideals of what America could be, right? This this incredible feat. But then at the same time, there was all of this protest happening that was spreading across the country and then across the world. And in response to the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all of this racism and police brutality that just seemed to just keep happening on a daily basis. And so I wanted to juxtapose these two occurrences that were happening at the same time in this image. Here's the ink of that, and then here's the final version. And I'll read this to you. Florida quarantine, day 13, May 30th. NASA successfully launches astronauts into space for the first time in 9 years. And this is the view above Earth. On the ground, protests spread across the US in response to the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, and too many others. Chicago, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Denver, Miami, Minneapolis. And I also said that this is a family story, and that's kind of the final element of this. I wanted to share this time lapse of this drawing with you, and I'll talk through it. But as I said, almost all of our activity was centered around our screen porch. So I wanted to capture this in a 2-page spread for the comic. And it's a quiet moment. It rains every afternoon in Cape Coral, Florida, in the summer. So I wanted to capture the weather and kind of the reflective time that we have during dinner and after dinner together, um, especially with all that was going on in the country during those 2 weeks too. These moments are really special. But also there was we had a lot of fun too. And so after 2 weeks with like our lives revolving around mangoes, my wife and I definitely noticed some kind of funny things about mangoes themselves. Day 6, May 23rd, after spending so much time with mangoes, we notice mangoes have mouths. The little green stem part of the seed piece is the tastiest. Ooh, abstract art. After cutting, the seed piece kind of looks like an alien cargo ship. So we had fun. I mean, I think we peeled and cut dozens and dozens of mangoes a day. So we just had fun with it and learned a lot about mangoes. And I wanted to end with this image, and this is my mom across 2 tables from us, again in our screen porch. This is the first. This is the night that we arrived in Florida, like at around 10 p.m. I think, and we were just so happy to see each other. And I just wanted to capture the how important that was at this time. And it's we're still going through this pandemic now. I mean, the social distance thing was excruciating that we couldn't hug her immediately, but also we were so relieved that she was well, she was fine, and we could be together even though we had to stay 6 feet apart from her. And so that's what the comic really meant to me, is just this time capsule of my family, and how important our time together was. And I think of it as this bright spot, this 2 week period as this really bright spot in a very dark time. 2020 has been really rough, but I think this sketchbook hopefully captures um, just the love that we have for each other, and how we're coping with it together.